allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alderman Carroll. Here. Alderman Hunt. Here. Alderman Janetti.
Here.
Alderman Caslaitis.
Here.
Alderman Stowe.
Here.
Chairman Carroll.
Here.
Okay.
Quorum declared. Okay, this is budget meeting for the Board of Education, and we're simply going to ask questions tonight, part of the normal budget process, and we'd like to start from the Board of Ed. Welcome.
Well, I'll do a little introductory here, Mr. Vaquero. We're here tonight to present for your consideration a proposed budget in the amount of $32,093,707, a $2,040,612 increase, which amounts to a 6.79% from the previous year. Although some may view this as a significant rise in projected dollars, which it is, during difficult economic times, the dollar amount is based on the estimated actuals for what's required to operate our school district in the 2016-2017 school year without anything extra. Realizing that we are all here in our specific roles, held accountable for specific responsibilities, we have one commonality. We are all advocates for public schools. As the superintendent of the Ansonia Public Schools, it's my job to serve as the Board of Education's leader, and in doing so, I am charged with preparing, advocating for, and implementing an annual budget that addresses the district's goals, aligns with our district improvement plan, and meets the needs of all of our children. On behalf of the Ansonia Board of Education, we're grateful to have this opportunity tonight to present the proposed 2016-17 budget for the Ansonia Public Schools. As you may recall from last year, many of you serving on this board heard me say that we are facing a financial crisis as a result of the growing needs of the students in our district. In addition, our buildings, which opened more than 16 years ago after an all-encompassing building project, are now requiring more frequent and expensive repairs. Our Board of Education President, Mr. William Nimmons, Mayor Cassetti, Alderman Vaquero, and Stowe have worked with James, Mike, and myself throughout this year to deepen their understanding of what we in our school district have been facing. And I thank them for the time that they have invested and the many meetings they have attended with our state officials. Before turning our presentation over to the Assistant Superintendent, I feel the need to address misconceptions that a few people have about our school district. First and foremost, that 2 administrators in each building are not needed. Please understand that 21st century children face different challenges than you or I did. Prior to the year 2000, we only had approximately 200 to 400 students in our elementary schools. Peck having 333, Meade 350 to 400, Willis School 200 with 1 administrator, Lincoln had approximately 300, Prendergast had a principal and an assistant, and the high school always had a principal, assistant, and another administrator running the alternative program, which equates to the same number of administrators we have now. So I do not understand for the life of me how people think we can, in fact, run our buildings with less administrators than we did before the year 2000, and we have many more challenges presenting. So it amazes me how people can come up with that. Okay, and we also have 2 curriculum coordinators, and before 2000 we had Joyce Aaliyah and Mrs. Laura Lane, who both of those women did, they were called language arts consultants, and they were doing the same job as our coordinators do now. The role of the administrator has changed drastically. It's no longer just bus duty and lunch duty. Administrators are instructional leaders of buildings. They're teachers of teachers and evaluators. They're data collectors. They're involved in data analysis to improve student achievement. Noteworthy, Ansonia High School, Mr. Dobbins, you'll be very proud of this. Ansonia High School is no longer a review school due to the efforts of the administrators, master teachers, and classroom teachers. So we applaud you for that. However, with that understand that next year we will probably no longer be receiving alliance funding because we are no longer a review school. So with every good thing we do, we get something taken away from us. Administrators are also responsible for monitoring the student absences and suspensions for the state. They're responsible for improving graduation rates, filling in for the nurse on the K-8 level when the nurse is out and we cannot find a sub, motivators of activities and events at their own schools, and mediators and counselors of students when needed. The second misconception is about Ansonia demographics. The demographics of Ansonia Public Schools have changed drastically. Many people in Ansonia aren't aware of that, but they have changed drastically. Today, we have 72% free and reduced lunch students. Key facts about communities reports in the New Haven County, it is reported that 28% of Ansonia students aged 0 through 17 in 2014-15 live in poverty, compared to 14% in the state of Connecticut. Ansonia doubles the level of poverty. As far as low-income students in 2014-15, 53.25% of our students aged 0 through 17 live in low-income families, as compared to 29% at the state level. In an article, Wealthy State is Failing Our Poorest Kids, by Wendy Lecker, she reports that high-poverty schools require more staff to address the challenges faced by their students. Instead, we in Ansonia have been cutting staff every year since I can remember. Small classes, reading and math specialists, and support services are particularly necessary. However, we in Ansonia already cut them a few years ago. As recent as this year, in preparing for this budget, we had to cut a social worker and maybe a life skills individual at the elementary level. We already have higher teacher-student ratios with classrooms of students who are in need of more supports. Years ago, every class, K through 4, had an aide if there were 25 or more students in the class. We no longer have that either. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but until they walk the shoes of an administrator or a teacher here in Ansonia, they cannot or shall not determine our needs or pass judgment. I am asking you, the subcommittee of the Board of Finance, how are we going to fight back against the rising tide of mediocrity if elected officials do not change our present course? We are asking for you to support our children and become a compelling voice for them. You are the people who can make a difference. Otherwise, you are preparing them and the city of Ansonia for a lifetime of poverty. Thank you. I realize you have a huge task on your shoulders because in 5 to 10 years from now, Ansonia and its children will have been greatly impacted on the decision you make this evening. And now I'd like to turn it over to Mike Wilson.
Thank you, Dr. Malone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present tonight. So, whenever we present at any kind of level, rather than hear the voices that advocate for education, not only monthly but daily for all the students in Ansonia, we decided to look what some other famous people feel about education. Brad Henry, former governor of Oklahoma, no other investment yields as great a return as the investment in education. An educated workforce is the foundation of every community and the future of every economy. Powerful words from Brad. Mayor Cassetti, last evening at the National Honor Society, was bragging about the students and the award that they received for becoming members. He's a proponent of education, and I like the fact that I get to brag about education as the mayor of this great city of Ansonia. We will forge a true partnership between the Board of Education and City Hall to address the needs of our schools. And he supports a great education for all of Ansonia students. And finally, Dr. Ben Carson. The people who founded this nation said that our system of government was designed for well-informed and educated populace. And when they become less informed, they become vulnerable. Think about that. That is why education is so vitally important. So you've heard us advocate for education. Those are some other strong advocates for education. As I know, some people around this table, as Dr. Merlone mentioned, partnership with Alderman Stowe and Alderman Vaccaro and others that believe in the education system. Education for all our children is a priority, and it is something that our schools and the board take very seriously. However, as many of you have heard at various Board of Ed meetings, our increased number of special education students is really placing a strain upon our budget. So in an effort to remain transparent, we wanted to show you just how much it affects our budget. You will see throughout my presentation graphically, and you have the packets in front of you, the exact numbers of special education, so that there are no misconceptions. We are being as transparent as possible. These are the real figures, these are the real dollar amounts. This should clear up anything, and at the end we will take questions. This chart shows the increase in special ed budget that is expended. As you can see, $1 million each year in special education costs. $1 million. And you look at that total number at the end, that total number of $10,797,000. That was out of our budget last year, so if you subtract that total number by that number, that is what the rest of the budget was remaining. You've heard of out-of-district special education costs, and how much does that actually come to for these students? That's been a popular question. The Board of Education has asked us to research that to get us some real numbers and some real data. Well, here's the real data. As you can see, roughly an increase of $210,000 per year in out-of-district placement for our special education students. So then you might say, well, okay, what is your percentage of special education students that we have in our district? And you can see in this chart, roughly goes up 2% each and every year. 2%. When thinking about that number, what does that equate to an actual number of students in our district? Actual number of students in our district. When this slide was put together was 518. We're currently around 529, 530, but 518 for the purposes of this slide, showing that we're growing on an average of 32 students each and every single year. This next chart represents the percent of special education as compared to the total percent of the budget utilized to properly educate. So for example, if you would indulge me and look at 2014, this reads that special education students made up 18% of our total student population. However, they accounted for 29% of our total budget. 29% of the total budget. Real numbers. Now, as anything else, we always come down to funding. What is grant funded? What is locally funded? Does anyone know? Do we know? Well, we do know, and we try to present that and keep that in perspective. 42% of this budget is locally funded. 58% comes from other funding sources, grants and other. And those are the other that we go out and try to write grants to bring more money into the school system in order to offset these costs. It's not as if we're sitting there not going out and aggressively looking for other ways to collect money or raise funds. 58%. The next several charts show that the amount of general ed costs are decreasing at the rate of 2 to 3% a year. So if we look at 2009, 22%, and the general was 78. It then creeps up to 24, 76, and so on until 2014-15, where you can see it's 32% and 68%. The piece of the pie is getting smaller. So when you hear the special education problem, okay, we're not saying it's just a problem here in Ansonia. It is a problem that the state of Connecticut is more than aware of. Dr. Malone and I attended a legislative breakfast, okay, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, where 16 other districts were represented, talking to our lawmakers, letting them know that these are the numbers. This is the reality that we face. They are aware of it. However, in our town, it is a smaller town, that piece of the pie is a bigger hit, not as felt in the bigger towns where the money is a little bigger. But those are the things that we want to make everyone aware of. The numbers are going up. So then people say, well, what about ECS? What are we getting? What about the IDEA grant? What about those grants we should be getting to help offset? Well, the grants we should be getting for special education dollars, we should be getting $3 million. We're only getting $582,000. We should be getting 40%. We're only getting 6.38%. Real numbers, real facts. As I just mentioned, what about ECS dollars? We know that the formula of ECS, any paper that you pick up, anything that you've read, the formula is not necessarily the most tried and true. Well, we should be getting 100% of that, we're only getting 72%. We should be getting 22 million, we're only getting 16 million. Huge difference, huge difference. These are things that, once again, this is our story. This is not a made-up story. This is the truth. These are the numbers. This is an effort to be transparent. This is what we face and what you're faced with in making the decisions to help support education. As Dr. Merlone mentioned, what about administrators? You know, oh, are we administrator heavy? The answer is no. This chart clearly shows, when you look at the number of administrators here in Ansonia at 12, with our student population directly below that, compared to districts of similar size, similar, plus or minus 700, give or take statistically to be accurate, you look and we're the 5th lowest. What's even more telling is on the next slide. We have 200 students per administrator. We are at the highest. That is one where we do not want to be the top of any bar graph, any graph. We'd rather be at the lower. 200 students per administrator. So to echo Dr. Merlone's comment, to say that we're administrator heavy or top heavy, that is a lie. That is not true. 100% not true. The numbers show it right there, and the 200 per administrator echoes that sentiment loudly. So as I said, and before I turn it over to Mr. Gaskins, this is the story. These are the numbers, these are the facts. This is not a story that was made up. This was not a story where you go and fact find to make the data look good statistically. That is not what this is. These are the real numbers. These are numbers that are presented to the Board of Education. These are numbers that Dr. Merlone, Mr. Gaskins, and I rack our head over every day, each and every day, to try to advocate and get the most we can for every child here in Ansonia. So I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that story with you this evening, and I turn it over to Mr. Gaskins.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to direct your attention to the mislet, the little board packet, presentation packet that we have here. If you don't mind, we have great piece of one of these loads. Everybody should have one of these. If we open it up, the first thing you have there is table of contents. On page 3 or 4, 3 and 4, I should say, you have the educational goals. I'm not going to read these to you, but I would highly recommend that you take some time on your own to read through those. And on the right are the budget assumptions and constraints, just as a summary, and I'm not going to read them to you all, but I encourage you to read them later. Essentially what we're doing is to build a budget that continues the current operations, meets our obligations, and essentially, although not monetarily, essentially it's an operationally 0% increase to our operations. Following that, you have several pages of narratives that were written by the site directors, principals, department heads. And then if you jump past those to page 17 and 18, your pamphlet should just naturally open up to that page, those pages there. On page 17, we have a little history, and I wanted to show this because since Dr. Malone and myself have been administrators in this district, we've seen an average increase of 2.34. Where essentially you could see there how it was 0, then the 2, then the 1, then back to 2. We're essentially playing catch up at this point, and I know a lot of the hearsay is the Board of Ed gets all the money. We are playing catch up, and the increase averages over those 2 years only 2.34%. And that's not outlandish increases in spite of some of the hearsay that is out there. Our first budget task, we ask the administrators what their needs are at all their schools and department heads, and we collect that information. The increase was well over 14%. We met with each administrator individually, and we reduced that amount to the superintendent's budget of 7.77%. and that was brought to the Board of Education. The Board of Education then reviewed the budget, made further reductions to the budget that we're presenting tonight, the $32,093,707, which is a 6.79% increase. Now, to explain a little bit about how we arrived at that number, on the right-hand side, page 18, are the fundamental budget drivers. You'll see right off the bat, we have the salaries and benefits. Salaries add 3% to our budget, benefits add 2%, and then we had, in the superintendent budget level, some new salaries and new benefits that we were hoping to get in there. That alone raised our budget 5.84%. Then you look at tuition and transportation. This is primarily for the out-of-district special education students that Mr. Wilson was referring to earlier and showed you charts on. That increase is 1.93%. That is not enough to even cover our current expenses, but we're trying to hedge away a little bit at the tuition and transportation expenses, a little bit every year, so we're putting money in for that, trying to be responsible. The net impact of all other accounts in the district, all other accounts, is 0.13%. All the other accounts increase our budget by approximately $38,000. What the sites did, they came in to the, submitted to central office a 0% increase, so they were allowed to move money within their accounts without going over their current year budget numbers as a total. And they also provided us with a list of the things that they need in addition to what they have operationally this year. Then the Board of Ed got the budget. They made some further reductions that I mentioned. Medical benefits were cut, $100,000, because we send this budget, put it together very early in the year, and we're still in the renewal process, so we are hedging against the renewal coming down. Heat energy, which was an adjustment based on price and volume, a reduction of $25,000. Special education, tuition, and transportation. This was $50,000 reduction from the new money that we're adding into those accounts. And the personnel, which were included up above, the both of those positions, the positions being reduced and, well, added and subsequently reduced, were based on NEASC recommendations. So the Board of Education cut just about $300,000, just about 1%, and that's how we arrived at our 6.79% budget. With that being said, I wanted to go into some of the needs that the schools and other departments sent to us on page 19. You'll see the list under the green of each site with their additional recommendations for additions to next year's budget. Really what we're looking at here, the vast majority of it is because of two reasons. One is the NEASC recommendations, and the other one is just to reinstate positions that have been cut in prior years. There's very little new positions here at all. And then you'll see 4 columns of reductions. And the only thing remaining in the budget at this point is 1.8%, which is $450,000 for that special education out-of-district tuition and transportation, reinstating one of the art music teachers that was reduced during last year's budget process. So we do not have that position this year. We'd like to reinstate it. And then an adjustment, which from prior savings that we can no longer obtain, of $20,000 to administrative salary adjustments. The next page you'll see, and the next 2 pages, 21, 22. That's an object summary of our budget, and I'll just walk you through that real quick. The first one is salaries, object code 111. It shows a 7.38% increase, and that's for various reasons. That is not the general wage increase that all of the employees get. It includes contractual increases. It includes any of the new positions listed. It includes jump in salary for administrators who were replacing the temporary administrators, where we had previously for 3 years saved Significant, 4 years, saved a significant amount of money. Sometimes administrators when they start, they're hired at a lower rate than what the contract says, it's percentage, so we've hit the point in employment years for that position, so we need to increase those salaries accordingly. Since we had the retirement incentive plan, we now have fewer veteran teachers, less retirements, and more teachers at the lower step levels. And step increase generally is more than a general wage increase. So we had those savings incurred in prior years. Well, now those savings are not being incurred, but the cost of getting back to where we were is coming due. Just to help try to explain the large increase there. For the next one, non-certified, more or less it's a lot of the same reasons, includes contractual increases, union step movement, which is greater than a general wage increase for newer hires that are lower on the steps. And it includes newer employees, much like the administrators, who start at a reduced percentage rate than the full salary. So after a couple of years, they work their way up to full salary, and those increases are greater than the general wage increase. Just for example, that's a lot of employees. So we have paraprofessionals, tutors, aides, behavior analysts, OT, PT, the secretaries, nurses, library clerks, grants manager, maintenance staff, custodians. Other personnel, you actually see a decrease. The bottom line is we're just not seeing as many of the coaching positions utilized and the class advisors utilized. We also have in there things like band director, class advisors, we have crossing guards, severance, and other pay, and the non-public nurse. Salaries overtime, that's just for custodians, really. There is no overtime in our district. The custodians need overtime for weekend snow plowing, and also to cover absences, we need a custodian in the building because we are so short-staffed. If there's only one custodian in the building, he's out, we need to replace him with someone else, thereby incurring the overtime by union contract. Employee benefits, this is a large number. Like I said, we were putting together the numbers very early. We're still working on the renewal process. That includes the medical, prescription, dental, life insurance, Social Security, Medicare, pension for the 457 payments, and unemployment. And one thing that's going to skew this, because the 457 plan is new, we did budget for it this year, but there's a 50% increase in that account next year. And obviously, as I'm sure you understand, you throw in an account, a sub-account here with 50% increase, it's really going to skew your numbers up for the overall account. And we also increased unemployment up 10% because of the incurred liabilities from last year that may come due, and also potential layoffs from this year.
Excuse me, Mr. Gaskins, the employee benefits, initially you had, I think, a 15% increase on that line back in February. How did it get down to 12.59?
Reductions, so when we build in, we had reductions of new staff being added. So when we don't just put in salaries, we also put in benefits. It was that in the board's general reduction of $100,000 that was mentioned on an earlier page.
Thank you.
And as we know, it's a renewal process. So early in the year, when we put this together, it's October, November, December. We actually I hand out the budget packets in August.
Yeah.
The number's higher, we try to negotiate. Last year, we put it out to bid. People say that Anthem, everybody knows Anthem's the most expensive. Well, we put it out to bid. There were several different vendors. Anthem was the lowest cost vendor, so we switched. We switched vendors for this year. So
Could it
first
go
year
any
back
lower
with
than
Anthem.
12.5%?
Pardon?
Could it go any lower than a 12.5% projection?
Could it come down
Possibly. It could. Yes, it could.
Thank you.
It could possibly. I wouldn't commit to it, though. I wasn't willing to commit to it at this point that we presented the budget to the board. Yeah, part of the renewal process. We are negotiating with the vendors still, so we don't have a final number. You have, so I'll skip through a lot of these. The substitutes is about the same. There's no change.
Excuse me, I have a question on the substitutes.
Sure.
You have an increase of $1,000, let me see. So-
Yeah, $1,000
$1,000.
increase, so it's 0.27%.
So the substitutes get $65 a day,
68.
68?
Mhm.
And are there any, that's like 5,700 substitutes per year. You divide $68 into the 375,500.
Well, we also have Kelly Services. There are a lot of different rates that we pay for subs. They all might get the same, but if we're getting it through Kelly Services, we're paying the service a little bit more. The rates do vary.
Okay, that's 5,700 at the rate of $68 or whatever it is, 5,600 substitutes a year is pretty substantial amount of substitutes.
No, we have a lot of people out with us.
And that also
We have the
includes,
attendance records. We do. On an average, we have quite a few, and we can't even get the substitutes in.
So you have.
Yeah, like there were like 7 today, right? Yeah.
Well, it's not $68, that's how much the substitute gets, but what he's saying is you're actually paying the service.
Oh, yeah,
more.
we're paying the service when we use Kelly
So
Services,
you're-
over $100.
Right, so you're paying over
Yeah.
$100 for a substitute. The substitute
Right.
is 68.
And how much was used last year out of that budget?
that's how I budget. I do it based on historical values. So I don't say, oh, we're gonna have so many absences. I do it on historical values, and that is a good number historically. I'm trying to think if I have that with me right now, because that would actually be the last year. I could get that to you. I can guarantee it's gonna be right around where I have it budgeted though.
All right, thank you.
So let me write that down. That also pays for the long-term subs. So if teachers out for an extended period of time, they're not taking the rate,
Right.
the sub rate. They move up to the bachelor's
Right.
step 1 in the teacher's contract.
Right, after 39 days, they get like $228 a day or something, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And how many long-term subs are there?
Oh, there are quite a few. A lot of
We have
people
quite a
went
few in
out
this
on
district.
maternity leave. There's quite a few.
Just saying, it's been said before, and I thank Matt for looking it up. Since July 1st, there were 41 teacher changes in this
We're up
district.
to 47, I think,
We're up
right?
to about 47 or 48.
47.
So now we're up to 47.
We've had 3 in the last 2 weeks,
Yeah.
I believe.
So as you can imagine, that's going to impact salaries, it's going to impact benefits, it's going to impact sub-accounts. There's tremendous turnover in this district. It's not, you set one number on July 1st, and that's what it's going to be on June 30th. It has to be managed throughout the year. It's a constant battle.
Thank you.
Let's see. Purchase services is the big chunk of that. That's a big number. Big chunk of that is our special education instructional assistants. The aides were in-house, so that number used to be in the non-certified salaries. A couple of years ago, we outsourced it to save money. Short-term savings was incurred. So that's why that number is so big. That's probably $925,000 of that number there. The rest is HVAC contracts, student data management, stuff like that. We have public transportation. Now, public transportation is a large increase. That is not our contractual increase with All-Star vendor that drives the buses around, the big yellow buses that everybody sees, bringing the kids to and from school. What these accounts actually take care of are that scenario. For the regular ed, the special ed takes care of in-district transportation and out-of-district transportation. We have late buses. If there's a homeless person that we're responsible for, it provides for that transportation as well. But the biggest nut here as far as the increase is the out-of-district tuition and transportation for special education students. That is not by the contract. Every time we get a situation where students go out of district, we solicit quotes We try to get minimum 3 vendors, and we go with the cheapest that we can every single time for every single instance.
Speaking about this, that line item, what's done to check to see if a parent in Ansonia has custody of a youth, say they're transferred from Bridgeport? Do you check into
We have
that?
Bobby Lisi is, he's checking everything. He checks with our attendance officer, he checks with the registration he goes out to. We just heard we have a new family with 7 students. And we have to make sure we check to make sure they're residing here in Ansonia.
Residing is one thing, but who has custody of the child? Does someone from Bridgeport have custody and they're living in Ansonia? That's my, do you look at, you
We
know,
do
court
have
papers?
custody battles because Liz had one just this year, correct, Liz?
Mr. Lisi looks at all of that and does an evaluation. He's very thorough, and I can tell you there have been significant dividends since he has started doing his reviews on residency.
So he peruses a custody agreement, you would see that a child living in Ansonia or going to Ansonia schools, the person in Ansonia, be that.
Well, I couldn't testify exactly what he does
When you
peruse.
register, Lori, when you register your children, and if there is a custody battle and say, I'm the mom, I'm going to make sure they red flag it at that school. And they do red flag because we are held liable if we hand the child over to the wrong person.
So every student in Ansonia, they have a custody agreement saying they live.
When the mom comes in and says, hey, listen, you know, we have custody issues here, I have sole custody, we check it, they have to come in with paperwork, that's put in the file, there's a red flag, and the administrators often have the secretaries put it on their phone.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
because we'll get in a lot of trouble here.
Thanks.
The other non-member transportation, because that is another piece that most people aren't aware of, we do transport and pay for the Emmett, Ansonia students going to Emmett, Platt, Nanawa, parochial. These all have to be budgeted out, and we do try to take advantage of savings wherever we can, including shared services. We do have a situation where Seymour and us have students going to the same school. We pick up our students here in town, we meet the Seymour bus, and then they transport to the school, and we share the bus. The remainder accounts, you'll see most of these go down. Liability insurance goes down, tuition goes up, which we'll be talking about. Heat energy was already mentioned, that went down. Textbooks went down. Library books went down. Technology supplies went down. New equipment went down. Technology went down. Technology software. Capital went down. What we're doing with it, when there are increases to the special education expenses, we have to make reductions into other parts of the budget, which would be the regular education. And that's why you see all these reductions here.
Excuse me, one question. How did textbooks go down?
Well, because we can't afford to buy them. We can't afford to renew the new textbooks, you know? And some of the literature we have on the computer now, too.
But
On average, how many of your classrooms are short textbooks?
If they're short, how many?
We're all short. We're all short textbooks.
Last year.
A lot. Most of our stuff is either photocopied or digital.
Yeah.
A lot of paper.
Yeah.
We make a lot of photocopies of what we need.
And this falls on the teachers because they have to go and research and they have to get the materials because we can't afford that.
What's adult education?
Oh, we have people from the Ansonia going to adult education. We have to put in our share
Yes.
every year with the
Required
Valley Region.
required by state law.
Yeah.
What is adult education?
They want
It's
to
not
grow.
the thing I get in the mail, is it? Classes?
Yes, that is.
It's like computers and
Yeah,
stuff?
you can take computers, there's dance classes, there's, you know, like, you wanted, if you didn't have your degree and you wanted your junior high school degree.
I'd like to make a point about that, because I did take classes,
Okay.
and under Hallahan, the city has to pay for it, the taxpayer does not. So that is in your budget?
We're part of a consortium, and I don't know that that statement is
true.
completely accurate. I'd have to do some research. They might be
Charges.
charging people to subsidize their budget.
You
but-
can charge for materials, but you can't
Charge
charge
for
for
the
the
lesson,
teacher.
yeah, for the teacher.
Yeah.
That's where this money is
And to actually reduce the expense of that, doing it individually, we do participate in that consortium and do it with other towns.
So your technical software, your technical equipment, your books have all, and new equipment have all gone down.
Yes,
So that-
and I'm
so that-
fairly certain they went down last year too.
We don't have money to
So,
purchase.
so so your explanation for that, I assume is to try to make your budget work?
That's exactly why. And it's actually a double hit, Mr. Stowe, because the accounts, there's been a spending freeze for this year because we need to sweep all the accounts to try to end the year without going over budget. And we need to sweep all the other accounts like textbooks, supplies, stuff like
And
that,
that's what we do every year.
to cover the growth in special education costs.
So just call it all technology, you know, some things that you want to keep up with for the future. You're cutting this to make your budget work.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
So what's more important, the textbooks or an administrator? And I know the administrators need, but it's like a,
As well as the safety of the children, because what the liabilities the city's gonna have to pay anyway. So you tell me what's more important. When we could use technology to get our materials, what's more important, safety of children?
I don't know, reading and writing or arithmetic, I mean, it's good to have a book.
We're making it happen, aren't we? That's how Mr. Dobbins got off of the list. He's not a review school anymore. He's not a review school.
Thank you.
We make it happen.
All right, let's take a look at something else here. We're going to take a look at the special education cost page on next page, page 23 and 24 of the pamphlet. Now, Mr. Wilson already pointed this out, but I really wanted to show it again because you can see here, I moved this into the packet now because it is so significant, it has such an impact on this district, our budget, the city, the revenues, everything. You'll see, if you just take those last 3 years there, column H, the increase or decrease, just those last 3 rows of column H, that's an increase of 2.5 million over those 3 years in the expense. Our total budget increase for those same 3 years was $2,053,000. So we always, I know we get increases from the city and we're very grateful for that. At the same time, the increases aren't matching our expenses, and that's why every year, year after year, we're making reductions, like Mr. Stowe was pointing out a little while ago. Then you see the chart to the right of that. It's the same chart that Mr. Wilson was showing. It really points out how the total special education budget expenses are outpacing the rest of our budget and the revenues. On the next pages, 25 and 26, we have our supplemental education grants. This is another line item in the city budget. Essentially, this is a wash. These accounts were put in the budget there. You'll see in the bottom right, highlighted, the $5,280,000, but we anticipate revenues of $5,280,000. So there is no impact to the taxpayer or the city for everything on the supplemental grants page. You can see, though, that this is more or less adding to our operations, and it's supplementing the educational system here in Ansonia to the tune of $5 million. When you look at the right, to compound the damage, you'll see that the large entitlement grant reductions that the district has had over the past 5-6 years. We've had a reduction in grants of $2 million. So at the same time that special education expenses are outpacing our increases, we have revenues going away on the other end. So that's compounding the damage here also. And I really want to stress these because people think, oh, you're always coming back for more money, you're asking for more money. It's always the same story, but it's not. We're not asking for new. We're just doing damage control. That's the best we could do at this point. When you flip to the next page, I'm going to highlight that a little more, pages 27 and 28. On the left, you have the latest released, March 2nd, 2016. The revenues from the state of Connecticut in support of education for the city of Ansonia, that this money goes to the city in support of education. And this is the projection for this year as of March. You see we get 15 million for the excess cost sharing. We get 116,000 for transportation. The city will get 110,000 for adult education. And the health services grant, they'll get just about $9,000. The big one there is because we have a subtotal of 15,279,000. Right below that, separated out, the excess cost grant, which is related to those high-cost special education students. The state is projecting the city will be receiving $1.5 million this year. For total estimated revenue by the state, these numbers are from the state, of $16,829,000. It's significant. It's also been flat year after year after year. I do want to point out at the bottom there, you'll see you have the uncapped entitlement. That's by statute what we should be getting. The capped entitlement, the amount that we're going to get. So the impact of that capped entitlement, because the state says we know we're supposed to give you, say, $100, but we only have 80, so we're only giving out 80. That's, in effect, what the cap is. That impacts our budget. This year alone, $738,000, because the state is not living up to their original agreement, their own legislation to provide funding from the state to the municipalities for education.
Trevor, this is what you've been working on? Right, but you did with that.
Yeah, it's one of the things.
I was looking at that and saying you were being kind.
Yes,
There's
because
a lot
I'm not-
more money than that they're obligated. You know, when Mike was doing his presentation and he was saying this is an honest assessment, this is real. And I did, with my wife, on my own time, with the help of the Board of Ed, did a lot of research about special needs and the ECS formula, and we actually did try to get to 70% of the towns that are in a similar position that we're in to, you know, complain to the state, and no one seemed to have the courage. Now, there is a lawsuit that is going on, and I mean, I know we're all praying that something comes of that. It's been going on since, what, 1976, I think?
I don't know what year, but it's been going on a while.
A long time, and the taxpayers pay for that, those formulas, however the money's being used for something else, and you know, we have a difficult task, needless to say.
You're absolutely right, and thank you very much for bringing that up, because what I'd also like to mention, this capped list here with the state revenues on page 27 does not include the shortfall in the ECS grant. We should be getting closer to $22 million in ECS, educational cost sharing funding from the state to the municipality, but we only get 15 million, and that has been capped every year that I've been here, 7 years.
Excuse me, James, so we're short like 6 million, give or take, right?
7 million,
From the state,
yeah.
right? But that's the IDEA money. The actual amount is 582,000.
Correct.
We get, the proper funding should be 3,647,000.
Correct.
We are short $3 million. So how does so the actual amount that we get, how does that compare with the other towns in our district of the same or similar demographics? Are they short
All the
like
towns are the same percentage, correct.
They're short about the same percent? Or are we lower than that or higher? Because we're
They're all the
6.3.
same. It's a capped amount of funding, so they just take what every district should be getting, every municipality, and prorate it down to whatever their capped funding level is.
So
So they're all the same
our voices
percentage.
in Hartford fight for these numbers for us? Do they care? What are they doing for us?
it's-
Rhetorical question, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We trapped, that's all right. Thank you. Right.
Let's shed some good news, bad news on this. Take a look at the page facing it, page 28, the landscape. What we have here is the SCE revenue to the city in support of education. And for 15-16, what I did, I have the uncapped entitlement, the capped entitlement, the impact of the cap. But on the right-hand side, there's two columns. The left column is the city budget, what is currently in the budget for this year, in the city's budget, and compared to what the state says they're going to be sending to you, to the city. I have the difference. The good news is that this year, there should be a surplus in state revenue to the city of approximately $550,000. That's the good news. It's actually great to us because we don't feel that we can support, and I'm just giving you a little heads up here, prior to our board meeting next week. It's become very difficult to sustain our operations within our current budget. So we're going to do some more analysis. We're going to approach the Board of Education, and these are the funds, this surplus of money that we may be coming back to the city for, asking for an additional appropriation. But it should be no harm, no foul. It's extra money. It's a surplus that we would be taking, not digging into any current budget items at the city. One thing you also want to notice here is when you take our proposed appropriation, our operational budget from the city, you add in the supplemental grants, our total cost of operations is $37 million. It's not the $32 million that we get from the city. Our cost of operations is $37 million. And when you subtract the revenue, the $16 million outlined on the previous page and the $5 million for the supplemental education grants, our budget, our $37 million total cost of operations is being supplanted or subsidized with $22 million from outside sources. So 59% of our educational operational expenses are paid for with outside revenues. The net budget that's locally funded by the citizens here in Ansonia, the taxpayers, is 41% of our total operational costs. The other 59%, we've achieved funding from elsewhere. The last, getting near the end, hang with me a couple more minutes. On pages 29, 30, and 31 is a complete listing of every district in the state. This is a state report, and it shows the per pupil expenditure. These have been ranked with the most generous per pupil expenditure being first. And we go down the first page, there are 45 districts. We're looking for Ansonia. You go down the second page, we're up to 106 districts. And there we are on the third page, 160 out of 165 ranking for per pupil expenditures. And I'm not trying to use that in a negative way. That is a testament to the efficiency at which all the employees in the administration and our Board of Education are operating this district. With the results that we've gotten, when we rank 160 out of 165, that's really a testament to the professionalism, the amount of dedication, and the efficiency at which the administration and the Board of Education get things done here in Ansonia. Last page, on page 32, is that we essentially have 4 line items that the city asking for. One's our general appropriations, one's the supplemental education grants, talked about those already. For I don't know how long, there's been a line for capital for portables, which is actually, I believe, 5 portable classrooms. They're continuing lease payments, and the school readiness parent fee account that is for the program, money collected for the program, and it goes back into the program. With all that being said, I know 6.79 sounds like a lot. Hopefully I explained adequately why we ask for people, to get shocked because they think that's such a large percentage increase. So hopefully I've explained why we request such amount. And I do want to say that we don't throw the money away. We're continuously looking for ways to save money. We've had spending freezes every year, and I can tell you right now, there's going to be one next year too. We eliminated a bus route. We put in LED lighting projects, subsidized by UI in the state of Connecticut to help us decrease the cost of getting the project done, as well as incurring the savings over the years. Outsourced special ed IAs. We changed the heating from fuel oil to natural gas. We had 2 voluntary retirement incentive programs that I spoke about earlier. We eliminated positions, we reduced staff. We bid our benefits several times, not just once, that I mentioned earlier. We've done it several times in the past 7 years. We've negotiated higher employee premium cost shares. Everyone in the district, all the bargaining units, and every employee has had a 0% increase at least once, in the 7 years that I've been here. Another way that we try to contain the cost, and our employees have been supportive of that. We've hired administrative temporary people instead of union people to incur cost savings. We shared our technology position with Derby for a while. We've reduced the number of printers operating in the district. We've renegotiated the copier contract midterm. Just this year, it saved $17,000 for this year alone. So we can reflect that in next year's budget also. And we've negotiated transportation rates. We've actually have a longer term strategy to deal with that because we're kind of a small district and there's not much competition to come here for 16 buses. So we're going to try to align ourselves with the districts surrounding us and put it out for a consortium bid, so to speak. And hopefully we'll get some competitive offers in here. With that all being said, I thank you for your time. I hope I didn't lull you to sleep. I'm not running away, Randy.
No, he's Mr. Still, but I'm Randy. The capital for the portables, 26,401. Shouldn't that be 5 instead of 4?
Pardon?
Should be 5.
Yes.
Oh, I mentioned that.
Okay.
I did mention that. I believe it is 5 and 4 is
I'm looking at what,
Yeah.
Yes.
I know I don't.
Change line 430, repairs and maintenance, 624,000 and change. Just give me some examples of what that money is used for.
All right, because what everybody typically thinks of is that's a facility-related account. I actually go by federal guidelines for accounting and financial management put out by the federal government, and it's specifically for education. So what other things that fall under that repair and maintenance? 430. Copier services falls under that. We lease our copiers, we work with our vendor, but under the manual and guidelines from the federal government, accounting-wise, the account it goes into is repair and maintenance. But we have copier services there, we have media equipment repairs, technology repairs, audio meter services, medical waste disposal, vehicle maintenance, and of course, the obvious one that everybody thinks of, facility repair and maintenance. Yes, we do, and during the capital plan, for some reason, it got mislabeled. I heard last night as water treatment, but where it said water treatment in the capital plan last night, my understanding is that's boiler replacement. We wouldn't put water treatment into a capital plan.
Speaking about the capital plan, we missed you at the meeting the other night. What's the Board of Ed's feeling on Mr. Nimitz' hard work to implement the capital improvement plan? Put a few million dollars in for the Board of Ed. How do you feel?
We greatly appreciate it and support it. And there were representatives of both the Board of Ed and our facilities director who worked very hard.
I know he did.
He did most of the work, as you know, Lori, and he was at the meeting.
I know, but he didn't speak, out on it, but, He did come, I was on that, on the committee, and he came to most of the meetings. I know Bill Nimmons tirelessly worked on that, because I was working on it with him.
Yep,
But thanks, so you're in support of it.
absolutely.
Thank you. Questions, Joe? Joe, have any questions?
I just would like to have the public, I believe we had somebody get into West Point this year, is that right?
That's right.
And last year,
And
No, Yale. The West Point person was from Emmett O'Brien.
okay.
Yeah, we had a Yale grad.
And you had a Yale
Yeah.
person got into
Yeah.
Yale last year. So I mean, some of your efforts are,
Oh, you would have been really proud of the student we had last evening, Eva Januskowitz. She spoke at the Honor Society, and she's a neuroscientist, and she did a phenomenal job speaking to the students. So we do have graduates from Ansonia High School that really made something of themselves. So we're fortunate in that we're able to offer those AP courses to the high school students, and most of them take advantage of them, and it's helping them get into colleges, and hopefully we don't have to take those away too.
I just want to, it's hard, this is a hard process, but, there's still, there's still people who are making good progress through our school system. And, you guys should be complimented.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I wish there was some, some way I could just make this work for everyone. I'm sure we all probably feel the same way. And the state is, is put us in a terrible situation. So we have a hard decision that has to be made.
we wish we could give the Board of Ed 10%. We love what you guys do. I love the freshman academy. You're getting great results. You didn't talk about that tonight, but I know, it's paying dividends throughout the year. Could you talk
That's
about-
paid for with the grant.
And also the PACE program.
That's paid for with our Alliance grant. So now that they did so well at the high school, we have to worry about that for next year.
The Progressive and Cooperative Education
Yeah,
program, the PACE program at the high school.
yeah.
Phenomenal program. Doing a good job, Mr. Dobbins. I think we're all set then. Any other questions? We're going to continue to do our due diligence on this and do the best we can for the board.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate your efforts. I know it's a daunting task.
Thank you.
Hopefully I explained the demands on the budget adequately. It's like asking Public Works, if you increase your road paving by $1 million a year, but don't come in with a big budget increase. You know what I mean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The demands on our budget aren't just from us, they're from outside sources.
So, before I make a motion to adjourn, we need to make another date.
Nothing.